Hey everyone, this is me and Alicia, and we're gonna do a little vlog style video today, okay? I know many of my videos lately have been sit down, talking through my big goals, little steps videos, but that is not this video. Today, I am gonna walk you through my very first filler yard that I did through Spoonflower. So hooray, thanks for joining me with this little one here. Now I'm sitting right in front of my window and the sun is setting, and so I am on a timeline here, but I really just want to walk you through my whole experience ordering this filler yard on Spoonflower. So in case you have no idea what I'm talking about, a filler yard on Spoonflower is basically the most economical way to get samples of your fabric. If you want to be a seller on Spoonflower, you do have to order a sample before you can list it for sale. This is something that I'm actually excited that they do. At first, you know, it seems like one of those things where you're like annoyed about it because you're like, why can't I just list it? But you want to make sure that the products that you are putting out into the world with your name on them are good and they look the way that you want them to look and everything like that. So you can order whatever you want. You could order yards and yards of your fabric if you really want to, or you can order a fat quarter or a test swatch, but the most economical way to do it is to order something called a filler yard. It works exactly the way it sounds, where you can have a yard of fabric and then it basically has 42 6x6 inch squares on it. And if you want, you can put a different pattern in each of those 6x6 squares. And so that way you can only order 1 yard of fabric, but you're proofing 42 designs all at once. You don't have to use all 42 squares, or rather you're certainly welcome to put one design in more than one square. And that's kind of what I did. So let me quickly walk you through the process that I took to actually order the filler yards. Apologies for all of the background noises. As you can see, there's cats running around everywhere. This is just my life, so welcome. To order a filler yard on Spoonflower, I literally started by Googling Spoonflower filler yard, and that first page that it brings you to will explain the whole process to you. But basically the way it works is that you have to create a collection on Spoonflower, and those can be private. So mine is private. It's called like May 2023 filler yard or something like that. And I just put all my patterns in there that I was ready to proof. So I certainly did not have 42 different designs to proof, but I had enough different scales and colorways that I figured I could fill a yard with what I had. This was not a super calculated thing. I just kind of wanted to test it out and see what worked. So once you've created a collection of your patterns, you can then go into that filler yard space and you basically get to pick which patterns are going to fill each square in your filler yard. I certainly leaned towards using more than one square for each of my patterns. So in many cases, I used 4 squares for each pattern. So to create a 12 by 12 inch swatch rather than individual 6x6 inch swatches. The reason I did this is because I really wanted to see what some of my patterns, especially my larger scale patterns, looked like when you could see more of them. You know, if you have a 6x6 inch pattern, but the motif that you're working with is like 8 inches tall, you're really not going to see very much of it. So I filled those larger 12 by 12 areas with the same patterns so that I could proof those larger sizes. I think I also just wanted to see more of my design too. 6x6 felt so little. So yeah. So once I started filling out my filler yard, I realized that I actually, because I wanted these larger 12 by 12 squares, I actually needed 2 filler yards, which was pretty crazy. I certainly do not have 42 designs. I have like 28 designs or something like that. But I put many of them on those 12 by 12 squares. And so I ended up filling 2 filler yards with all of my different designs. Then you just order it on Spoonflower and wait for it to show up. So mine took about 10 days to show up, which is longer than other Spoonflower stuff that I've ordered before, but whatever, it showed up. So now I would love to show you what it looked like when it arrived. So I took some video here and I will put that in right here for you to take a look at the whole process of kind of my unboxing of my filler yard. Okay, so here are all of my swatches. I love them so much. Again, I'm sitting in front of a window, so everything is kind of blowing around a bit. This is a really high production value video, as you can tell. But here they all are. I pinned everything onto just a foam core poster board, and it's pretty precarious because there are little pins poking out of the back everywhere, but this way I could just visually see all of my designs, at least the 12 by 12 ones here. So I'm gonna set this down and I'm gonna keep talking about these different patterns. So you're gonna sit right in front of the video? That's nice. You wanna be in the video? Oh, Pumpkin, there's pins in there. There's pins in there. You're gonna get hurt. Okay, so I ended up ordering the Petal Signature Cotton, which is the lowest price point that you can get on Spoonflower. I think probably a lot of people will proof on that fabric just because it is the cheapest, but it is also worth noting, and this, of course, it makes sense, but the different colors, the different patterns are going to look a little bit different on the different substrates. So the different types of fabric might look a little bit different. Just something to keep in mind. Certainly something I want to test out more. I do know you can order all kinds of test swatches from Spoonflower showing all their different fabrics and how color looks on their different fabrics and stuff. I have not done that yet, but this is just the very basic Petal Signature Cotton. Now, in case you are new around here, I create watercolor patterns. I do not use vectors. My cats are attacking that fabric board. I'm trying to convince myself to use more vectors, but I'm really a raster girl through and through. So I was curious to see how my watercolor kind of translated onto fabric. And I'm happy to report that it worked pretty well. So I'm going to show you the original painting for this, and then I'll show you the actual fabric. Okay, so I actually ended up cutting up this painting because I made it traditionally repeat. That's a whole other story, but let me find a good fish that we can refer back to. Okay, this is an easy one. So this blue one here with that red tail, we can spot this one in the pattern. So this is what the original painting looks like, okay? And now here's the small scale betta fish, but looking at that same fish, there it is right there. So I don't know how well you can see on camera. It does lose some of its detail, right? There's a little bit of blur, and this is not a result of how I built the pattern. I scan my paintings in at a really high DPI. I use about 1200 DPI, so certainly the resolution is very high on my end. This is the translation over to fabric, so you lose a little bit of that detail, but overall I'm pretty pleased with the way the colors work on the printed version. Let me show you a larger scale. Okay, this is my largest betta fish scale. Obviously, you're not getting much fish on here. It's so big that you don't get a lot. But here, I think the medium scale is probably a good representative. Oh, I think we're upside down. Not that it matters too much, but. So here, we can take a look at that fish again, and you can see the quality turned out pretty well. So let's take a look. So there's the original painting compared to the printed on the fabric. So I think it did translate, you know, quite well. And also you can see that while the color match isn't like 100% perfect, it's pretty good. Like, I'm pretty pleased with the way that the colors translated over to the fabric. Okay, in terms of texture, in some cases it's that watercolor texture is really well retained, and in other cases it's lost. And from my experience with this Philly yard, it's largely related to scale. So let me show you an example. This is my favorite pattern. These are my oranges on a dark navy background. But if we look at the actual orange blossoms, they are lacking quite a bit of detail. Right, they're pretty like solid color, and you don't see a lot of the actual detail of the painting. And honestly, I'm okay with that for this fabric. Like, I really like the way that looks. But if we look at the larger scale, you can actually see some of that texture and some of the details in those blossoms. So that's partly due to the scale. I think similarly, I have this mega large scale of these mushrooms that I painted, and you can really see the watercolor paper texture on these, which I like that at the large scale. And this is why I do my patterns in watercolors, because I really want to preserve that watercolor look. And it actually does translate to fabric pretty well. Let me show you the smaller scale of that. Okay, so here's my small and my extra small scales. And obviously you can see you lose some of that paper texture at a smaller scale. So that's just to be expected. It's just something to keep in mind as you create and order these filigree yards. Here's that extra small scale. Okay, so I want to wrap up by just talking about my final impressions of my very first filigree yard experience. First of all, I think the online ordering experience was very easy, and that I would give 5 stars. That was great, no problem there. The shipping it took a while. I'm located in the United States, and my previous orders from Spoonflower have arrived in or at least shipped in 3 days before, and this one didn't ship for a good 8 or 9 days. So it felt like it took quite a bit longer, but it did get to me within 2 weeks. So, it's not terrible considering that it's print on demand. Now, in terms of the actual quality, I would say the feel of this petal signature cotton isn't great. I know this is going to be hard to translate on video, but it feels a little stiff and a little bit inexpensive, because it is inexpensive. I haven't washed this fabric, which is, you're supposed to wash it before you do anything with it. And I just got so excited and I got right to, ripping up in my different swatches. So I haven't washed it. Maybe it'll soften up a little bit as it's washed. In terms of the print quality, like I said, I'm really impressed with it. I think that they do a good job at Spoonflower of maintaining both textures where you want them and colors as well. I will say there are some places where you might have low contrast that things might blend into each other a little bit. Like I've got this colorway of my oranges, and you can see those orange blossoms just kind of fade into the background a little bit, which I don't mind on this print. I still think it looks good, but something to keep in mind is that if you want your elements to stand out a lot from the background, just make sure those colors are pretty contrasted from one another. So I think that's it. Let me know if you have any additional questions about my filigree yard experience. I felt like a little kid waiting for the best gift ever when I was waiting for this to ship. I was just really, really, really excited, and I'm truly thrilled with how these all came out. So if you'd like to check out my designs, they are available now on Spoonflower for fabric and wallpaper both. So I will certainly leave a link below. You can find me at Peppo Studios on Spoonflower, and on Instagram I'm there all the time. So if you have any additional questions about filigree yard or about my design process or anything like that, feel free to leave those below. And come hang out with me on Instagram if you want to see a lot of the behind the scenes of how I make all of these designs, because I am there a lot asking for feedback from everyone a lot. So I'd love to see you there. Okay, so with that, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you very soon for the next one. Bye everyone.